The small town of Elmswood had always been quiet, almost too quiet. Nestled in the hills, it was a place where everyone knew each other, where secrets were kept buried under layers of trust and tradition. But on the night of June 14th, something changed. Something that would shake the very foundation of the town. Detective Robert Hale had seen his fair share of crime scenes, but nothing could have prepared him for what he found that evening. The phone call had come in late, a muffled voice on the other end telling him to hurry to the Old Mill Lane Road. There had been no explanation, no details. Just urgency in the tone. As Hale sped down the winding roads, the only sound was the hum of the tires against the asphalt and the relentless beating of his heart. As he arrived at the scene, his eyes fell upon the crowd of officers gathered around a dilapidated house at the end of the street. The faint glow of their flashlights cut through the dark night, and Hale could feel an uneasy chill creeping up his spine. "Detective," a young officer greeted him as Hale stepped out of his car. "We haven't found anything yet. It's just strange." Strange. That was all the officer could say. Hale pushed past him, his mind racing. The old house in front of him was nothing more than a ruin, abandoned for years. Its rotting wooden boards creaked in the wind, and the faint smell of mildew clung to the air. Yet it wasn't the house that bothered Hale. It was what was found in the backyard. A body. The body of a man, lifeless and cold. But it wasn't the man's identity that made Hale freeze in his tracks. It was the way he was positioned, lying in the exact center of the yard, as if carefully placed there. His arms were stretched wide, and his fingers curled, almost as if he was reaching for something just out of his grasp. His eyes, wide open, stared up at the night sky, unblinking, unseeing. There was something off about it all. A chill in the air that didn't belong, a sense of dread that hung heavy over the town of Elmswood. Hale's breath caught in his throat as he knelt by the body. It wasn't just the bizarre positioning that disturbed him. The man's shirt was torn, revealing a deep gash across his chest. Blood had pooled around the wound, dark and coagulated. Yet, there was no sign of struggle, no defensive wounds, no signs of a fight. It was as if the man had been placed here after he died. And Hale could feel it in his bones. This wasn't an ordinary murder. "Who is he?" Hale asked, turning to the officer who stood nearby. "No, sir. No ID on him, nothing in his pockets." "Check the fingerprints, run his DNA through the system. This guy isn't from around here." As the officers continued to examine the scene, Hale's mind raced. Who was this man? Why was he killed in such a strange manner? The entire scene felt orchestrated, like some kind of twisted performance. But who could be behind it? The rest of the night passed in a blur of flashing lights, the smell of damp earth, and the low murmur of hushed conversations. Hale had barely left the scene when he received another call, this time from the station. There had been another body discovered just outside of town. This time, there was no mistaking it. The body had been placed exactly like the first, but this one was different. It was a woman, her body sprawled across a dirt path, her expression one of sheer terror, her eyes wide open, staring at nothing. And just like the first victim, she had been positioned carefully, almost as though someone was trying to send a message. A message? But what? Detective Hale's thoughts swirled as he stood by the body, the darkness of the night closing in around him. There was a pattern here, but it was one he couldn't yet decipher. Someone was toying with him, playing a game, and Hale knew he had to get ahead of it before it spiraled out of control. The sun had barely begun to rise over Elmswood when Detective Hale received the call. He had barely slept, the images of the two bodies haunting his every thought. What was the connection between them? Why were they positioned in such a ritualistic manner? As Hale stepped into the station, the weight of the case seemed to press down on him, but he pushed forward. He had work to do. "Detective, you need to see this," Officer Davis called from across the room, holding a manila folder in his hand. Hale approached, his curiosity piqued. Davis slid the folder across the table, and Hale opened it carefully. Inside were photos that made his stomach turn. The images were of a third body, discovered early that morning in a wooded area just on the outskirts of town. This body, however, was different. The victim was a young woman, but she wasn't positioned like the others. Her body was found in a small, makeshift grave, half buried beneath the dirt, with strange symbols scratched into the earth around her. These symbols, Hale muttered, running his finger along one of the pictures, they're not random. They mean something. Davis nodded. We thought the same thing. But we haven't been able to identify them yet. It looks like some kind of ritual. A ritual. The word hit Hale like a ton of bricks. Could this be connected to some kind of cult? A group with a twisted agenda, targeting victims for some unknown purpose? Hale didn't believe in coincidences, and the more he thought about the bodies, the more the pieces began to fall into place. He glanced at Davis. Get me a list of anyone with a criminal background in Elmswood. I want to know who's been involved in strange activities, or worse, who's been known for cult-like behavior. Davis nodded and walked off, and Hale found himself lost in thought again. The woman's death was different. The others had been placed with such precision, so methodical. But this one seemed personal. Like someone was sending a message. A message that Hale couldn't yet decipher. As the day dragged on, Hale visited the autopsy room. The medical examiner, Dr. Leah Carson, was already at work on the third victim, but Hale could tell by her expression that something was troubling her. Dr. Carson, Hale greeted her. Anything new? She looked up, her tired eyes meeting his. There's something strange about the third victim. At first, I thought it was just the way she was buried, but... She paused, clearly struggling with how to phrase her next words. When I was examining her wounds, I found something that doesn't add up. She's been stabbed, yes, but there's something odd about the placement. The angle of the cuts, it looks like the person who did this knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't just a random attack. Hale leaned in, his interest piqued. You think this was personal like the other two? Dr. Carson hesitated. I don't know, detective. But what I do know is that the injuries are precise, almost like they were planned. It's almost like this killer is an artist. An artist? Hale's mind raced as he considered the possibility. Could it be someone with a sick need for control? A killer who didn't just want to end lives, but wanted to create something dark, something that made a statement? Dr. Carson handed Hale a sheet of paper with the autopsy results. I also found something else. The victim's blood had traces of a rare substance in it. It's not something we see often in Elmswood. It's an ancient herb, one that's been used in rituals for centuries. Do you think it's connected to the symbols found around the body? Possibly, Dr. Carson replied. But we're still waiting for confirmation from the lab. If it is, then we might be dealing with something far more dangerous than we initially thought. As Hale left the autopsy room, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was getting closer to uncovering the truth. But the deeper he dug, the more questions arose. Why these victims? What was the killer's ultimate goal? And most importantly, what was the significance of the symbols? Later that night, Hale stood at the edge of Elmswood, staring out into the darkness. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of his phone ringing. It was Davis. We've got a lead, detective. You're going to want to see this. Hale's fingers gripped the phone, his mind racing as he listened to Officer Davis's voice on the other end. You're not going to believe this, detective. We've found something. The unease in Davis's voice was enough to send a shiver down Hale's spine. What is it? Meet me at the old church on Hilltop Drive. We found something connected to the symbols. It's something you need to see in person. Hale's heart skipped a beat. The old church had been abandoned for decades, its weathered stone walls now nothing more than a crumbling relic of the past. But its location made it significant, high up on a hill, overlooking all of Elmswood. If someone wanted to hide something, it would be the perfect spot. As Hale drove to the church, his mind churned. The symbols, the ritualistic killings, the ancient herb found in the third victim's blood, they all pointed to something more than just a series of murders. There was a purpose here, something the killer was trying to communicate, but what? And why was the church important? When Hale arrived, Davis was waiting at the entrance, his face pale and tense. It's inside, Davis said, his voice low. You need to see this. Hale followed him inside, the air thick with dust and the scent of decay. The moonlight filtered through the broken stained glass windows, casting eerie shadows across the room. In the center of the church, something caught Hale's eye, a large, black stone altar, covered in strange markings and worn by time. But what stood out the most were the items placed carefully upon it. A collection of photographs. Each one was of a different person, their faces obscured by a thick red cross drawn over their eyes. But it wasn't just the faces of strangers. Hale recognized one of them. It was Officer Davis himself. "What the hell is this?" Hale murmured, stepping closer to the altar. He examined the photographs, his heart racing as he scanned each one. The photos were old, some faded with age, others showing signs of recent handling. Each one had the same red mark. Davis's face went white. "I don't know. I didn't even know these people, detective. But I found them in the church when we got here." "Did you touch anything?" Hale asked sharply. "No," Davis replied quickly, shaking his head. "We didn't want to disturb anything. We thought you'd need to see it first." Hale turned the photos over one by one, trying to find some connection, some explanation. But there was nothing. Just the haunting images of people whose identities seemed to be hidden behind those crosses. Then Hale's gaze fell upon something else. A piece of paper, scrawled with words that sent a chill through him. "The watcher waits in the shadows, but only the chosen will see the truth." The handwriting was messy, hurried, as though the writer had been desperate to get the message out. Hale frowned, his mind racing. The watcher. The chosen. These weren't random words. They were part of the same puzzle, a puzzle that was slowly coming together. Davis looked over Hale's shoulder, his eyes widening as he saw the message. Do you think the killer is involved with these people?" "I don't know," Hale replied, his voice grim. "But I intend to find out." As they stood there in the dim light, the sound of footsteps echoed from the back of the church. Hale's hand instinctively went to his gun as he turned toward the noise, but he saw nothing. Just the long shadows stretching across the floor. "Did you hear that?" Hale asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Davis nodded nervously. "Yeah. Someone's here." Before Hale could respond, the door slammed shut, and the heavy wooden beam that once held it open fell to the ground with a deafening crash. Darkness enveloped the room, leaving only the faint moonlight to guide their way. Hale's pulse quickened, and he motioned for Davis to stay close. "Stay alert," Hale ordered. "We're not alone." They moved cautiously through the church, each step echoing in the eerie silence. The only sounds were the distant creaks of the building settling and the pounding of Hale's heart. Then, from somewhere deep within the church, a voice whispered, barely audible, but unmistakable. "Only the chosen can see the truth." The hairs on the back of Hale's neck stood on end. The voice was too quiet, too distant to pinpoint, but it was real. Someone was here, watching them. "Did you hear that?" Davis asked, his voice cracking. "I heard it," Hale replied, his eyes scanning the darkness. Before they could react, the sound of a door creaking open broke the silence. Hale's instincts kicked in, and he sprinted toward the noise, only to find the back door wide open. No one was inside. Where the hell did they go? Hale muttered, frustration boiling inside him. "Who was that?" Davis asked, his voice shaking. Hale didn't answer. The truth was he didn't know. But the killer, or whoever was behind this, was getting closer. And with every passing moment, the game was becoming more dangerous. The night felt colder as Hale and Davis left the church, the eerie silence hanging heavily between them. The unsettling feeling of being watched still gnawed at the back of Hale's mind, but there was little time to process it. The investigation had taken a darker turn, and the pieces were slowly coming together, though they still didn't form a clear picture. Hale couldn't shake the words of the message found in the church. "The watcher waits in the shadows, but only the chosen will see the truth." Who was the watcher? And why were they targeting these individuals? And, most unsettling of all, what did the red crosses on the photographs mean? Davis remained silent as they walked toward their cars, the weight of the night pressing down on them both. But as Hale reached into his pocket to check his phone, a sudden chill ran through him. The last text he had received wasn't from anyone in the department, it was from an unknown number. The message was simple. "I know what you're looking for, detective. And I'll make sure you find it, but you'll wish you hadn't." Hale's heart skipped a beat as he read the message again. It was as if the killer, or whoever was behind all this, was toying with him. The game was shifting. The rules were changing. And Hale wasn't sure he could keep up. "Detective, what is it?" Davis asked, noticing Hale's troubled expression. Hale showed him the message and Davis's face went pale. This is bad." "I know," Hale muttered, feeling the weight of the words settle over him. Whoever was sending these messages was watching their every move, and they were getting bolder with each step. "We need to find out who's behind this," Hale said, determination flooding his veins. "But we need to be careful. Whoever this is, they're smart." They drove back to the station in silence, the only sound the hum of the tires on the road. Once inside, Hale immediately began reviewing the evidence they had gathered so far. The photographs, the symbols, the blood-stained altar in the church, and now this cryptic message. A few hours later, Officer Davis knocked on Hale's office door. "Detective, you need to see this." Hale glanced up, startled. "What is it?" Davis held up a stack of papers. "It's a list of every person involved with the church over the last few years. We cross-referenced it with the pictures and we found something strange." Hale sat up straight. "What did you find?" "We found a name that keeps appearing. Daniel Reeve. He's been involved in the church's renovation efforts. We also found his name on several old police reports. He's got a history with a local group that's been rumored to practice, well, some very strange rituals. But the thing is, no one really knew about it. It's like they vanished years ago." Hale's pulse quickened. "And Reeve? Where is he now?" "That's the thing. We can't find him. No records, no trace. It's like he disappeared." Hale's mind raced. Daniel Reeve. The name sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it. Yet, it felt like a crucial part of the puzzle, one that might be able to lead them straight to the person behind the killings. "Where's the last known address for him?" Hale asked, his voice tight with urgency. "We've got an old address near the outskirts of town," Davis replied. "It's worth checking out." Without wasting another second, Hale grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. "Let's go." The drive to the address was long, the road winding through dense woods and thick fog that hung like a blanket over the land. As they approached the house, Hale couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for them, something dangerous. The house was a dilapidated farmhouse, hidden behind a tangle of overgrown vines and trees. It looked abandoned, but there was something about it that sent a cold shiver down Hale's spine. The windows were dark, and there was an oppressive stillness in the air. Hale motioned for Davis to stay close as they approached the door. It creaked open with a gentle push, revealing a dark and empty interior. The smell of mildew and decay hit them like a physical force as they stepped inside. "Reeve's not here," Davis muttered, scanning the room. "This place is empty." But Hale wasn't convinced. There was something off about the place. The remnants of old furniture were scattered across the room, and the walls were adorned with strange, hand-drawn symbols, symbols that mirrored the ones found at the crime scenes. Hale's breath hitched. "We're in the right place. Reeve's been here. We just need to find out why." As Hale moved through the house, he came across a locked door at the back of the house. It was old and rusty, but Hale's instincts told him it was important. He tried the knob. It turned easily. Inside was a small, dimly lit room that looked like it had been untouched for years. But what caught Hale's attention was a large, wooden chest at the center of the room. Without hesitation, he opened it. Inside was a collection of items that made his blood run cold. More photographs, more symbols, and a small black mask. The mask was old, its edges frayed with age, but it was unmistakably a symbol of power, of control. Hale's fingers brushed against it, and a wave of unease washed over him. Whoever wore that mask would be the one pulling the strings. Whoever wore that mask would be the one who controlled everything. Just then, the sound of footsteps echoed from behind them. Hale spun around, heart racing. "Who's there?" he called, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. But no one answered. Hale's eyes narrowed as he scanned the room, the hairs on the back of his neck standing up. They were not alone. The footsteps grew louder, echoing against the wooden floorboards. Hale's heart pounded in his chest as he instinctively drew his weapon, scanning the dimly lit room. Every sense was heightened, every nerve on edge. Something, or someone, was in the house with them, moving in the shadows. But the room appeared empty. "Davis, stay close," Hale whispered, his voice low but urgent. Davis nodded, his hand resting on his own gun as he moved cautiously behind Hale, his flashlight flickering across the walls. "Maybe it's just the house settling," Davis suggested, though there was doubt in his voice. Hale wasn't buying it. "No. Someone's here. We're not alone." They moved further into the room, the mask Hale had found still weighing heavily in his mind. Whoever had left it here was connected to everything. The murders, the symbols, the strange rituals. It was as though they were being led down a path, piece by piece, with every discovery pushing them closer to the truth. But the truth was becoming more elusive, more dangerous with each step. The footsteps came again, this time louder and closer. Hale's pulse raced as he spun around, gun raised, but there was nothing. No person. No shadow. Just the silence of the old farmhouse. "Detective, you need to see this," Davis called from across the room. Hale rushed over to Davis, who was standing next to a small table. On it was a series of photographs, similar to the ones found in the church. The red crosses were painted over the eyes of each subject, but there was something more. Hale's stomach turned as he recognized the people in the photos. Among them was Officer Davis's face. "Why are you in these?" Hale asked, his voice sharp. Davis froze, his face pale. I don't know, Detective. I've never seen these before." But Hale wasn't so sure. The look in Davis's eyes suggested something deeper, something more than simple confusion. Hale studied the photographs carefully, noticing a date scribbled on the back of each one. The dates were all in the past week. Hale's breath caught in his throat. These were taken recently. Davis looked at the photos again, his eyes widening. "But how? How could I be in these?" Before Hale could respond, a loud crash came from the back of the house. It was a deafening noise, as though something, or someone, had just smashed through a door. "Stay here," Hale ordered, his hand tightening around his gun. "I'll check it out." Davis grabbed his arm, his voice frantic. "No, Detective, we need to stick together. We don't know what's out there." But Hale wasn't listening. He needed answers. And every instinct told him the next one was just around the corner. He moved toward the back of the house, the floor creaking under his boots. The sound had come from the cellar door. As Hale reached it, he hesitated for only a second before forcing the door open. The room below was pitch black, the air heavy and damp. Hale's flashlight illuminated only a small portion of the space. He stepped down into the darkness, his flashlight sweeping across the cold, stone walls. Suddenly he heard a noise, a low, guttural growl. Hale's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't human. "Who's down there?" Hale shouted, his voice cutting through the silence. The growl came again, closer this time. Hale raised his gun, his eyes narrowing as he adjusted his stance. He could see a shape now, moving in the dark. Something was watching him from the shadows. And then a figure emerged, stepping into the light. It was Daniel Reeve. But there was something off about him. His skin was pale, almost sickly, and his eyes glowed with an unnatural intensity. His mouth twisted into a cruel smile as he took a step forward, revealing his sharp teeth. He was wearing the same black mask that had been found in the farmhouse. "You shouldn't have come here, Detective." Reeve's voice was calm, too calm. It was like he already knew everything about Hale, about Davis, about the case. Hale's blood ran cold. "What the hell is going on here, Reeve? Who are you?" Reeve chuckled, his gaze never leaving Hale. "I am the Watcher. I am the one who pulls the strings. The one you've been searching for." "You're the one behind the murders?" Hale demanded. Reeve's grin widened. "Murders? Oh no, Detective. These are sacrifices. Rituals. You see, I am the chosen one. I've been preparing for this for years. And now, you've come to witness it all." Hale took a step back, his eyes scanning the room for any means of escape. The walls seemed to close in around him as the realization hit. They had walked right into the killer's trap. Reeve wasn't just a suspect. He was the mastermind, and this whole town was a pawn in his game. Davis appeared at the top of the stairs, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Detective, what's happening?" Reeves' eyes flicked toward Davis, and a dark laugh escaped his lips. "Ah, Officer Davis. You're one of the chosen as well. You just don't know it yet." Hale turned quickly, his mind racing. "Davis, get out of here. Run." But it was too late. Reeve lunged forward, his movement swift and inhuman, knocking Hale off balance. The force of the attack sent Hale crashing to the ground, his gun sliding out of reach. For a moment, everything went black. When Hale regained consciousness, he found himself bound to a cold stone altar, the familiar symbols drawn in blood surrounding him. He could see Davis, unconscious, lying beside him, also restrained. The air was thick with an unnatural energy, and the sound of chanting echoed from the shadows. Reeve stood before them, the black mask now resting in his hands. "This is it, Detective. The culmination of everything. The ritual will begin, and you'll finally understand." Hale struggled against his restraints, but they held firm. "What do you want, Reeve? What is all of this for?" Reeve's gaze was cold and calculating. "The Watcher waits in the shadows, Detective. And soon, you will join me in the darkness. The truth will be revealed, but not the way you expect." Hale's pulse raced. The ritual, the symbols, the murders, this was more than just a series of killings. It was a grand design, a plan that spanned years, with Hale and Davis as the final pieces. As the chanting grew louder, Hale knew one thing for sure. They had walked into the lion's den. And now, there was no turning back. Hale's heart hammered in his chest as he struggled against the cold stone altar, his wrists burning where the ropes cut into his skin. The dark chanting that filled the air felt like a physical weight pressing down on him. His mind raced, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Reeve, the sacrifices, the cryptic messages, and now this. The ritual. It was all so much darker than he'd ever imagined. Davis stirred beside him, groaning as he regained consciousness. His eyes were wide with panic as he looked around, taking in their surroundings. The cold, blood-stained symbols on the floor. The torches flickering with unnatural flames. The sense of imminent doom hanging in the air like a suffocating cloud. "Detective, what's going on?" Davis gasped, his voice hoarse. "What is all this?" Hale gritted his teeth, trying to keep his composure despite the overwhelming fear that was beginning to creep in. "He's the one behind it all. The murders, the messages, this is his plan. The ritual is the final step." Davis's eyes widened in realization. "We have to stop him." But even as Davis spoke those words, the chanting grew louder, and Hale felt an eerie sensation creep over him. Something was shifting in the room, as if the very air around them had become charged with dark energy. Reeve, standing just a few feet away, his mask now discarded, seemed to be in a trance, his eyes closed in concentration as he continued the ritual. "Reeve!" Hale shouted, his voice trembling with urgency. "Stop this. You don't have to do this. Whatever twisted plan you have, it's not too late to end it." Reeve's lips curved into a cruel smile as he opened his eyes, locking gazes with Hale. "It's already too late, Detective. The ritual has begun. You and Officer Davis are the final pieces. The darkness will rise, and I will be its leader." "You're insane." Hale spat, his voice filled with defiance. Reeve stepped closer to them, the air thick with power. "Insane? No, Detective. I'm chosen. This was always my destiny. And now you'll understand, what we are doing is bigger than both of you. The Watcher, the sacrifice, the chosen ones. You have no idea how far this goes. The power I'll wield will reshape everything. You should be honored to be part of it." Hale's mind reeled. He had heard of dark cults, rituals, and legends, but never had he imagined he'd be standing at the center of one. Everything he thought he knew about the case had been a lie, a carefully orchestrated trap meant to lead him to this moment. The chanting reached a fever pitch, the voices of those hidden in the shadows blending together in a cacophony that sent chills down Hale's spine. It was as though the walls of the room themselves were alive, vibrating with the energy of the ritual. And then, something changed. The temperature in the room plummeted. The torches flickered violently, casting distorted shadows on the walls. Hale could feel the presence of something else, something ancient and powerful, entering the room. It was a force beyond anything he had ever encountered. "Davis, we have to get out of here now," Hale shouted, adrenaline surging through his veins. But Davis, still struggling against his restraints, was transfixed by the scene unfolding before them. The floor beneath them seemed to tremble as Reeve raised his arms, his voice rising in a chant that seemed to resonate with a dark, otherworldly power. Hale's vision blurred as the room seemed to warp around him, and for a moment he could have sworn he saw figures moving in the shadows, shadows that weren't human. The air smelled of sulfur, of something rotten and decayed. And then the unthinkable happened. A massive figure materialized in the center of the room, stepping out of the darkness. Its shape was indistinct at first, a swirling mass of shadow and smoke, but as it took form, Hale realized with horror that it was no mere illusion. The figure was towering, its limbs impossibly long, its eyes glowing with an eerie, malevolent light. It was a creature, an entity from beyond. And it had been summoned. The ritual had worked. And whatever Reeve had hoped to unleash was now awake. "No!" Hale shouted, panic seizing him. "This isn't what we were meant to find. This isn't what we—" But before he could finish, the creature turned its gaze upon them. A deep, rumbling growl reverberated through the room, sending a shockwave of fear through Hale's chest. The creature's eyes locked on Davis, and Hale could feel the weight of its stare, as though it were judging them, deciding who was worthy to survive. "Davis, get down!" Hale screamed, but it was too late. The creature's eyes glowed brighter, and in an instant, a pulse of energy shot out, slamming into Davis with the force of 1,000 thunderstorms. Davis cried out in agony as he was thrown backward, his body convulsing as if struck by lightning. Hale's heart raced as he fought to free himself from his restraints, his mind screaming for a way out. He had to do something, anything, to stop this nightmare. But as he struggled, Reeve stepped forward, a look of triumph on his face. "It's over, detective. The power is mine." The creature moved closer to them, its massive form towering over Hale and Davis, its breath coming in deep, unnatural rasps. The very ground beneath them seemed to quiver as it loomed over them, its eyes burning with malevolent hunger. Hale's mind raced as he remembered the old texts he'd read in his younger years, texts about ancient rituals, summoning dark entities. There had to be a way to reverse it, to stop this madness before it consumed them all. But the creature's hand shot out, grasping Davis by the throat. Davis gasped for air, his body twitching violently as it was lifted off the ground. Hale's blood ran cold. "Davis!" Hale yelled, struggling against his bonds. Reeve laughed, his voice low and filled with dark satisfaction. "This is only the beginning, detective. You will never stop what is already set into motion. The Watcher has awakened, and soon we will reign." Hale's mind worked frantically, trying to come up with a plan. There had to be something, anything, to save Davis, to stop the ritual. He was running out of time. Davis's strangled gasps echoed through the chamber as the dark creature's hand tightened around his throat. His eyes bulged, the terror clear in every breathless moment. Hale watched in horror, his heart pounding as the creature's power seemed to drain the life from him. "Davis!" Hale shouted, his voice raw with desperation. But the words felt hollow in the vast, suffocating space. The creature, now fully manifested, loomed over them, a being of pure malevolent energy. Reeve, standing a few feet away, didn't seem to care. He was lost in the trance of the ritual, his face alight with triumph. "The power is mine. There is no stopping what is already in motion. You, Detective Hale, are too late." But Hale wasn't ready to give up. He couldn't. Not with Davis's life hanging in the balance. Think, damn it, he urged himself. There had to be a way out of this, something he could use to save them. As his mind raced, he remembered something, an old myth he had read years ago, about creatures like the one standing in front of him. Beings from another realm, bound by ancient rules and limitations. They could be controlled, but only through certain rituals. And, most importantly, they could be banished. Reeve, Hale spat, his voice low with fury. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." Reeves' dark eyes flicked toward him, and the twisted smile on his face deepened. "I know exactly what I'm dealing with. The Watcher is here, Detective. And soon, it will rise, and nothing will stand in its way. Not even you." Hale's heart raced as he struggled against the ropes, his mind spinning with the knowledge he had gleaned from those old books. The ritual, the one Reeve had begun, wasn't just about summoning this creature, it was about keeping it bound to this world. But there was a way to break the spell. He just needed to find the right way to do it. Time was running out. Davis's body hung limp in the creature's grasp, his head tilted to the side, his skin growing paler with each passing second. If Hale didn't act soon, it would be too late. "Reeve!" Hale shouted, his voice breaking through the madness. "Stop the ritual or it will consume us all. You don't understand what you're inviting into this world." For a moment, Reeve faltered. His eyes flickered with doubt, but only for a second. He was too far gone, intoxicated by the power of the creature and the control it gave him. Hale could see it in the way he stood, like a man who had forgotten his humanity, lost in the grip of something far darker than he could have ever imagined. "Stop playing games, Hale," Reeve sneered. "It's too late for talk. You failed." Hale's mind raced faster than ever. He had to think of something to break Reeve's concentration, to sever the bond between the creature and the ritual. Suddenly an idea struck him. The mask. The one they had found earlier in the farmhouse. It had to be more than just a symbol. It was a key. Reeve had worn it during the ritual, and it seemed to be tied to the dark magic he was wielding. If Hale could get his hands on it, maybe, just maybe, he could disrupt the summoning. Hale glanced over at the table nearby, where the mask lay on display. It was within reach, just out of sight of Reeve, but not far enough to be unreachable. Davis's body twitched in the creature's grasp, and the creature's eyes burned with an unnatural intensity, as though it were aware of Hale's thoughts. But there was no time to waste. "Davis, I need you to hang on," Hale muttered, his breath heavy with exertion. "Please hold on." Hale strained against the ropes, his muscles burning with the effort. His fingers were raw, but finally he managed to break free of the restraints, falling to the cold stone floor in a heap. His eyes shot to the table, his body moving on instinct. Reeve was too focused on the creature to notice. Hale crawled toward the mask, his hands shaking as he grabbed it. The dark energy surrounding it surged, sending a shockwave of power through the room. Hale gritted his teeth and pushed forward, clutching the mask tightly in his hand. "Stop it, Reeve!" Hale shouted, holding the mask up as though it were a weapon. "This ends now." Reeve turned, his eyes blazing with fury. "You don't know what you're doing, Hale. You can't stop this." But Hale didn't listen. He hurled the mask into the air, letting it fall to the ground with a loud, metallic clatter. The room seemed to vibrate with energy, and for a brief moment, the creature hesitated, its glowing eyes narrowing as if it were considering Hale's challenge. And then the unthinkable happened. The creature recoiled, its massive form shuddering. The energy in the room shifted, a powerful force pushing back against Reeve's ritual. The walls trembled, and the chanting from the shadows fell silent. "No!" Reeve cried, rushing toward the creature. "You cannot stop it. You cannot." But Hale could feel it now, the creature's grip on this world weakening. The ritual was unraveling. Reeve's control over the dark entity was slipping, and the power he had worked so hard to summon was now slipping through his fingers. Hale knew this was their chance. He didn't wait. He rushed toward Davis, grabbing him by the arm and pulling him away from the creature's clutches. Davis was barely conscious, his body limp and unresponsive, but Hale wasn't giving up. He had to get them both out of there. Reeve let out a furious, guttural roar as he realized the ritual was collapsing. He turned toward Hale, his face twisted with rage. "You fool! You've ruined everything!" But Hale wasn't about to let him win. With one final push, he managed to drag Davis to his feet, pulling him away from the altar and into the center of the room. The creature, now struggling against the weakening bond, screeched in fury, its eyes glowing brighter with each passing second. But as the last vestiges of the ritual crumbled away, The creature let out one final, ear-splitting howl before it vanished back into the darkness. Hale stood, panting and covered in sweat, his heart still racing. The room was silent now, save for the sound of their ragged breathing. Reeve was on his knees, his face filled with disbelief and anger. His hands shook as he realized what had happened. His power, his control, was gone. "You ruined everything," Reeve whispered, his voice breaking. "You should have let it happen. You should have let me rule." Hale glanced at him, his face hard. "You were never meant to rule anything. You were just a puppet." With one final look at Reeve, Hale turned and helped Davis out of the room, their escape just beginning as the weight of the nightmare started to lift. The stone walls of the chamber seemed to close in around Hale as he dragged Davis through the darkened corridors. His breath was shallow, each step forward a struggle, but he couldn't stop. Not now. Not after everything they had endured. Davis was barely conscious, his skin pale and clammy. The strain from the ritual had taken its toll on him, and Hale could feel his friend's life slipping away with every second that passed. His pulse was weak, his body trembling as if fighting against an invisible force. They needed to get out. Hale's heart thudded in his chest as he glanced over his shoulder, half expecting Reeve to come charging at them with vengeance in his eyes. The maniacal expression on Reeve's face as the ritual collapsed still burned in his memory. The power that had consumed him, Hale couldn't allow it to return. He moved faster, pulling Davis down the winding corridors, his eyes darting back and forth, searching for any sign of a way out. The further they moved from the ritual chamber, the more the air seemed to thicken with an eerie heaviness. It was as if the entire house were alive, feeding off the darkness that had just been unleashed. Suddenly, there was a sound, a soft rustle, like the shuffle of footsteps behind them. Hale froze, his body going rigid as the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. "Did you hear that?" Davis muttered weakly, his voice distant, as if he were still caught in the haze of the ritual's influence. Hale didn't answer. His instincts screamed at him to keep moving, to keep Davis moving, but fear gnawed at him. Someone, or something, was following them. He could hear the footsteps now, deliberate and steady, growing louder. And then came a voice, a low, mocking voice that made the blood freeze in his veins. "Leaving so soon, detective?" Reeve's voice slithered through the air, cold and taunting. Hale's grip on Davis tightened, but the man barely responded, his consciousness flickering like a dying flame. He wasn't going to make it much longer. Reeve's footsteps echoed behind them, growing closer. Hale's mind raced, searching for a way out. But the passageway ahead seemed to stretch on forever, an endless maze of stone that didn't lead anywhere but deeper into the heart of the house. "Davis, listen to me," Hale whispered urgently, his breath coming in ragged bursts. "You need to stay with me. We're almost out." But Davis only moaned in response, his body slack against Hale's side. Hale could feel the weight of his friend becoming heavier, the toll of the dark magic that had nearly drained the life from him. "Almost," Hale muttered to himself, trying to force the words into reality. "We can make it." Suddenly, there was a crack, a sharp, deafening sound that cut through the tension in the air. The floor beneath their feet seemed to shift, the very foundation of the house groaning in protest. Hale didn't have time to react. The ground gave way beneath them. With a sickening jolt, Hale and Davis fell into the darkness. For a moment, the world seemed to spin around them, their bodies tumbling into the black void below. The air was thick, choking, and then, nothing. When Hale's senses returned, he was lying on his back, gasping for breath, his head pounding with disorienting pain. His limbs felt numb, but he forced himself to sit up, his mind immediately searching for Davis. "Davis!" Hale croaked, panic seizing his chest as his gaze flickered over the darkness. "Davis, where are you?" He called louder this time, struggling to his feet. He found Davis a few feet away, lying on the ground, unmoving. A wave of terror washed over him, and he rushed to his side, flipping Davis over onto his back. The man's eyes were closed, his face pale and ghostly under the dim light filtering in from somewhere far above. But he was still breathing. Weakly. Barely. "Come on, Davis," Hale whispered, his voice tight with emotion. Stay with me. He could hear Reeves' mocking voice again, distant but still clear. You can't escape, detective. No one ever does. Hale's blood ran cold. He knew that tone. Reeve wasn't just taunting them. He was toying with them, like a predator with its prey. Hale's muscles tensed, and his eyes frantically scanned the room, desperate for a way out. But all he saw were dark stone walls, endless and oppressive. With one last effort, Hale picked Davis up again, this time more carefully, trying to avoid making any noise. The air in this underground chamber was thick with an oppressive energy, like the weight of 1,000 eyes watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike. Where do we go from here? Hale muttered to himself, each step heavy and slow. There was no telling how far they had fallen or if they were even in the same part of the house anymore. And then, just as Hale began to lose hope, he saw it, a small flicker of light in the distance. A doorway. A way out. Without thinking, Hale staggered toward it, moving as fast as he could, the world around him spinning. Reeves' laughter echoed behind them, louder now, closer. You think you can escape me? Reeves' voice hissed from the shadows. I control this place. You're in my domain now. But Hale couldn't stop. Not when he could see the way out. He pushed through the heavy wooden door, just as the first tendrils of darkness reached for them. The light from the other side was blinding at first, but Hale didn't hesitate. He forced his way through the door, pulling Davis with him. They stumbled into what appeared to be a small courtyard, an unexpected slice of daylight breaking through the shadows. But there was no time to appreciate it. The door slammed shut behind them, trapping them outside. The courtyard was surrounded by thick, stone walls, the air fresh but the space too confined. Hale's heart pounded in his chest as he set Davis down gently on the grass. Hale took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing mind. We're out. We're out. But the peace was short-lived. From above, Hale heard the unmistakable sound of Reeves' voice, closer now, but still far enough that Hale had a chance to catch his breath. You can't escape me, Hale. Not like this. The chase wasn't over yet. The courtyard, once a beacon of hope, now felt like a trap. Hale crouched beside Davis, whose labored breathing echoed in the still air. The light outside was soft, but it provided little comfort. Every shadow seemed to hide something far worse than the last, an unsettling reminder that their escape was still a distant dream. Hale glanced up at the towering stone walls surrounding them. There was no way out. No gates. No paths leading to freedom. Just the suffocating grip of the house and the promise that Reeve would hunt them down to the very end. The sound of footsteps from behind jolted Hale's attention. He didn't need to turn around to know that Reeve wasn't far. The man was relentless, like a force of nature, impossible to outrun. Get up, Davis, Hale whispered urgently, his voice strained. But Davis didn't respond, his body limp and lifeless against the cold stone floor. Hale shook him, his hands trembling. Davis, don't you dare leave me now. Davis let out a shallow gasp, his eyelids fluttering open. His eyes were glassy, the remnants of the ritual still clouding his senses. Hale breathed a sigh of relief. Thank God. You're still with me. Davis struggled to sit up, his head lolling. I can't. I don't know how much longer I can. No. You're not giving up, Hale interrupted, gripping his friend's shoulder tightly. We get out of here. Together. No one's dying today. But as he spoke, he could feel the oppressive weight of the air shift. The sound of Reeves' voice grew louder, chilling the blood in Hale's veins. You think you can run from me? Think again, Hale. The taunting words seemed to come from every direction, echoing off the stone walls. Hale's heart raced. They had no time left. Come on. Hale growled, helping Davis to his feet. We need to move. They stumbled forward, Hale supporting Davis as they made their way toward the only other visible exit, a narrow, seemingly forgotten alleyway. But the way was dark and treacherous, filled with loose stones and sharp rocks. Behind them, Reeves' laughter echoed once again, this time mixed with the sound of heavy footsteps that sent tremors through the ground. He was close. Too close. The alleyway was narrow, and it seemed to stretch on endlessly as Hale pushed forward, desperation driving every step. The walls of the stone building on either side pressed in on them, making the air feel suffocating, but there was no turning back now. "Davis," Hale urged, his voice strained. "Come on, just a little more. We're almost there." Davis nodded weakly, his hand trembling in Hale's. But his steps were slow, dragging with each move. Hale could feel the weight of his friend's exhaustion and fear, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Not when Reeve was still hunting them. And then it happened. A sharp noise cut through the air, like the snapping of a twig. Hale's eyes shot up and he froze. In the distance, emerging from the shadows, was Reeve, his figure taller and more imposing than before, his face twisted into a predatory grin. The twisted ritual had changed him, and now, his dark aura pulsed with unnatural energy. It was as if the very shadows themselves obeyed his will. "Did you think I wouldn't find you?" Reeve's voice carried across the distance, a low growl that sent chills down Hale's spine. Hale's breath hitched. They were trapped. The alleyway ahead led to a dead end, and Reeve was closing in fast. There was nowhere left to run. With no time left to think, Hale spun around, pulling Davis with him. He didn't know where they were going. He just knew they had to move. "Don't look back!" Hale shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "Run!" But even as they took their first steps, Reeve was upon them. A force like a blast of wind slammed into Hale's chest, throwing him back into the stone wall with a sickening crack. Pain exploded in his ribs, and he gasped for breath, his vision swimming. His grip on Davis loosened, and he could feel the man's body slipping from his side. Reeve's figure loomed above them, his eyes glowing with an unnatural fire. "I told you, you can't escape me." He reached out with one hand, and the ground beneath them seemed to shift again, opening into a dark abyss. It was like the earth itself was bending to Reeve's will. Hale gritted his teeth, pushing against the weight of the invisible force holding him in place. His muscles screamed in protest, but he refused to give in. "Not today," Hale muttered under his breath, blood trickling from his mouth. With every ounce of strength he had left, Hale lunged at Reeve, using the last of his energy to knock the man off balance. The momentum sent them both tumbling to the ground, but Hale didn't hesitate. He grabbed Reeve's arm, forcing him into a chokehold. "You don't control me," Hale spat, his grip tightening. Reeve's laughter echoed in his ears. "You think this will stop me?" It was as if time slowed. Hale felt the energy shifting, the weight of Reeve's influence pulling at him. Every muscle in his body burned, but he held on. He had no choice. "You're not in control anymore," Hale said through gritted teeth, determination flashing in his eyes. "You're not the one with the power." But Reeve's expression twisted into something far darker. His hand rose, and a pulse of dark energy shot through Hale's chest, sending him crashing into the ground with a sickening thud. The world around him spun, and for a moment, Hale could barely breathe. The pain in his ribs was unbearable, but he didn't have the luxury of stopping. "Run!" Hale gasped at Davis, his voice weak. "Go now!" The alleyway seemed to stretch endlessly, and Hale's strength was fading. He watched as Davis, dazed and barely able to move, stumbled forward, his footsteps faltering. But Reeve wasn't done. He grinned, watching them struggle, knowing that no matter how far they ran, they would never truly escape. He wasn't just after their lives. He was after their souls. The alleyway felt like a cage, a suffocating tunnel with no way out. Reeve's malevolent presence was closing in, and Hale knew that time was running out. His body ached, bruised and battered from the relentless force of Reeve's power, but it wasn't the physical pain that made his heart race. It was the growing realization that they were cornered. The end was near, and they had no more cards to play. But Hale wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Not while Davis still had a chance to survive. He could hear Davis's labored breathing beside him, but the man was barely holding on. His friend was slipping, too much of the dark magic had taken its toll, and there wasn't much life left in him. The bond they shared had been their strength, but now it was all slipping through Hale's fingers. "Davis!" Hale whispered, his voice thick with desperation. "Stay with me, please. We can get out of this." But Davis only nodded weakly, barely able to lift his head. "Just do it," Davis croaked, his voice a mere whisper. "Stop him." Don't let him win. Hale's eyes darted around the alley, searching for something, anything, that could help them. But there was nothing. Just the oppressive darkness, the weight of Reeves' presence pressing down on them from all sides. And then, the ground shifted beneath their feet once more. The earth seemed to groan, cracking open with a terrifying noise as a figure stepped out of the shadows. His eyes glowed with the unnatural light of a man possessed, his smile twisted with satisfaction. He had them exactly where he wanted them. You really thought you could defeat me, Hale? Reeves' voice was low, mocking. You're nothing more than a broken man, clinging to the last shred of hope. Hale's pulse quickened. His hand tightened around the hilt of his gun, his last remaining weapon, but even as he drew it, he knew it wouldn't be enough. Reeves' power was beyond anything he could fight with physical strength. What do you want, Reeve? Hale spat, his voice trembling with anger. Why all this? Why the rituals, the murders, the lies? Reeve stepped forward, his eyes glinting with madness. Power. Control. You wouldn't understand. All I ever wanted was the ability to transcend, rise above everything. And now I will. Not if I can help it, Hale muttered under his breath, a flicker of resolve sparking within him. Reeves' grin deepened. You've already lost, Hale. You're too late. Before Hale could react, Reeve raised his hand, and a blast of dark energy shot forward, slamming into Hale's chest with enough force to knock him off his feet. He hit the ground hard, pain exploding in his ribs. Blood spilled from his mouth, and his vision blurred. Through the haze, Hale saw Davis, barely conscious, struggling to stand. The ritual's effect still had its grip on him, but something had changed. There was a fire in his eyes, a resolve that had been missing. Hale couldn't explain it, but it was there. No, Davis whispered, but his voice was stronger than before. I won't let you have him. Hale's eyes widened. He didn't know how, but Davis seemed to draw from some unseen well of strength, a spark of something unbroken inside him. And in that moment, everything changed. With a primal scream, Davis pushed himself forward, his hands glowing with a strange energy that crackled in the air. Reeve stepped back, surprised as Davis's energy surged outward, forcing him to stumble. You think you can challenge me? Reeve sneered. You're nothing but a puppet. A pawn in a game you can't possibly comprehend. But Davis didn't flinch. I know exactly what you are. In one swift motion, Davis raised his hand, and the ground beneath them seemed to erupt. Dark tendrils shot up from the earth, wrapping around Reeves' body, binding him in place. The energy in the air crackled, and Hale could feel the immense power surging through Davis. It wasn't just dark magic, it was something more. Something pure, something real. Reeves struggled against the dark energy, his face contorting in rage. No, this is mine. You can't. But Davis's power only grew stronger. It's over, he said, his voice filled with finality. With a final burst of energy, Davis slammed his hand down, and the tendrils of power tightened around Reeve, forcing him to the ground. The air grew heavy, thick with the crackling energy that pulsed from the earth itself. For a moment, it seemed as though the entire world held its breath. And then, with a deafening roar, the ground split open, and Reeve was consumed by the darkness he had sought to control. His body disintegrated into nothingness, his scream echoing through the alley, fading into silence. Hale's heart pounded in his chest as the world around him seemed to settle. The oppressive weight that had been pressing on them lifted, and the sky above them, once clouded with the remnants of Reeves' power, cleared. It was over. Davis collapsed to his knees, the energy draining from him just as quickly as it had come. His eyes fluttered closed, and Hale rushed to his side, his hands shaking as he checked for a pulse. It was weak, but it was there. You did it, Hale whispered, relief flooding him. You saved us. Davis opened his eyes slowly, the faintest of smiles crossing his lips. We did it, he corrected weakly. Hale laughed, the sound rough but full of relief. Yeah, we did. They sat there for a moment, the weight of what they'd just been through settling in. The house that had held them captive, the darkness that had threatened to destroy them, was gone. And though the scars would remain, Hale knew they had survived. Together. As they stood, helping each other to their feet, Hale glanced back at the alleyway, where the remnants of Reeves' dark power were still dissipating into the wind. The world was quiet now, and the future uncertain. But whatever came next, they would face it together. It was over. They had won.